Stop complaining how people.
I want you and that young man to tie that knot. I'm gonna pray for you. And I want you to hold on to God's unchanging hand, because he helped Joshua fight the battle of Jericho. Yes.
It's the old
He helped Daniel get out the lion's den. He helped Gilligan get off the island.
Let me get straight to the business. Yeah. Got them lions in the building. Yeah. Why you lying to the children? Yeah. Why you lying to the children? Yeah. RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been to bed. Man, they know they no contest. Yahuwah, he do the bled. We will not see you tomorrow. Cause you cannot go to thought. All the sons and all the daughters. Standing hard with big man daughters. But my son, he made me Taurus. On that line, I'm still a Taurus. Karate kicking Chuck Norris, 4-5 on my waist. If he started, will not hesitate to get retarded. Oh Lord, he ain't got a PowerPoint, he farted. He running to the hills like a Philistine. Jihad hitting Hamites with the guillotine. Situation turned up with the Ratchet team. JJ 7000 to the debate league. Yeah, I know them haters gon' hate me, but he won't debate me. Pistol off safety. He respond, come wake me. If I don't get up, nigga shake me. If he don't show up, then he fake G. I touch down and make these nigga nuts hate me. Dear brother. Ballin' and crawling all the way from H-time. Let me get straight to the business. Man, them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Why you lying to them children? You gon' cry, you gon' get it. Me, I'm like a frog, nigga, ribbit. Of course, it's in the spirit. I just got the Porsche, she can steer it. Mito got the raw, Shaq and Willie. Lamborghini doors, you better not spill it. Mama's high, say I'm more than just a villain. Mama's cry, arms open wide for her children. Suicide, immortalized as the realest, yeah. Death by cut, black suicide. Let me get straight to the business. Got them lions in the building. Why you lying to them children? Yeah. Why you lying to them children? RIGHTEOUS. Man, you know I've been in bed. Man, they know they no contest. Yahuwah, he get the Wow, what's that? Why didn't take it over? Number one debate league, you heard me? When it's up, it's stuck.
Lion building.
Metaphor.
Cedric, get out your goddamn. I see your feet. I'm right. The most feared debate on this goddamn planet. Sit your ass down. Because I know you can't stand it. That's right. Man, shout out to everybody in the back chat, man. All the people that support the Lions Den have been here for years. You know what we do. When we got our foot on their neck, we keep the foot on their neck. Goddamn it, Cedric, you know your name in the title, you're peeking in. You know, after we get a little bit here and there, you're more than welcome to come up here and get your medicine. You hear me? Right now, before we get into the meat and potato, I got to go ahead and introduce the queen of the Lions Den. I'm talking about Sister Karima. Go ahead.
You already know what to do. If you like the information that's going to be presented, please hit that like and share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And tell a friend.
Yeah, tell a friend, man. I don't know why y'all don't be acting like the Lions Den is not the excellence when it comes to this information and debates. I don't know why you don't think we ain't been around for a long goddamn time. I don't know why you don't think JJ 7000, who involved in Mandinka Mali, has evolved and has came out and evolved and debated everybody. I've been in the goddamn trenches. These little young pups like said, you been shining goddamn Ankh West shoe shine, his little penny loafer for years, nigga. Now you want to try to come and step up to the goddamn king of debates. The hell's wrong with you? I'm still waiting for your goddamn source. Are you peeking around? But we got other stuff with your Eurocentric, pseudocentric, goddamn racist ideology that you perpetuate into the community. And as a people champ, I won't let you get by with that. You hear me? I got one. As a matter of fact, we got an important announcement to make. We got a new Lions Den champion. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This guy's he's been in the trenches for a long time, but now Kareem and I has made a business decision. And goddamn it, the new face of the Lions Den. I'm talking about Indigenous Blackman. Go ahead, man. Go ahead, champ. Tell them what it is, champ. Goddamn me.
What's going on, family? Peace and love. I want to say thank you to Kareem, the backbone of the Lions Den, and I want to say thank you to the guy who has the track record, the guy who has, the debates under his belt and has debated all these guys. Like you say, JJ's been doing this for a long time and, been putting in work, beating y'all up. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know why y'all keep playing with him. But me, Indigenous, I'm over here. I come with a guileless heart. I'm not here to I come with a guileless heart, free from any intent to deceive or to impress others. I'm just here to present the true family stuff that we need to hear. As Rick DeSantis is trying to take away our Black history, people like that, and trying to turn us away for the kids from being able to hear it. So we got to put out some truth before they, start, censoring us and making us stop talking about it. So let's go ahead and get into this. I left off with Mouth this last time.
Okay.
He's on population control.
Right.
What did you say, JJ?
I said right. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was on population control, and he was saying that we should just stop helping them. Don't give them no assistance. Just let them starve out and die. And that was one of Darwin's, heroes. He looked up to Malthus's work.
Oh shit! Hold up. I don't know what I pushed. Hold up. All right, go ahead. It went off. My fault.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what I want to say to finish off that Malthus thing. Right? So if half the population.
Hold up, Indigenous man. I hit the wrong button somewhere, man. God. That came from, man. Fuck. The fuck is... Hold up, bro. Hold on, we had a check. Just bear with me, mute my mic.
Yep, that's right. You got too much stuff going on in the background. You got to figure it out. So give us a minute. Aces.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that, man. Hit the wrong button or something. All right, go ahead, champ. Go ahead and speak on it for a minute. Reiterate what we got going on here in the Lions Den. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Where I left off at, we was going over Malthus, and what I was about to say was, if over half the population of the world was in India, Africa, and China, you know.
Why is this background?
What is it? What is that noise?
Hold on. Yeah. All right, there we go. I had to come back on the channel to get the link. So we good now.
Oh.
All right, go ahead.
We good now?
Yeah, we good.
All right, thank you. Yeah, what I was talking the last video where I ended off was with Malthus, okay, family, and Malthus was, about population control, pretty much like Bill Gates today, but he was the one who started, I'm sure they got it from Greeks and other people earlier, but this is where your scientific racism in America comes from. And Malthus was a population control guy, and Darwin looked up to his works and he used his works. We showed that in the video, the last video of my last presentation, part 1. So my question to Malthus and the population control, because we're going to start hearing about population control a lot in these next videos, and we're also going to start hearing about selective breeding, family. So
Malthus is a.
This is why I showed Malthus.
He's a 3-minute video, right? Indigenous. You want to show him again? I got him up here. It's a 3-minute video.
No, we don't need to show him again. It's on part 1. If y'all want to go and check that out, it's on part 1. Okay, family. But we don't. I don't want to take because that'll take up time. We got to get through this quick.
Well,
so we're talking about population control and selective breeding, family. Okay, selective breeding, they're choosing who gets to mate, who they see as fit, who they deem as, desirable, the ones who get to mate, and then the other ones should be quelled. This is selective breeding. Okay, and this is the part 2, and we're getting into that portion right here. But my question to Malthus and population control people is, if over half the population of the world lives in India, Africa, and China, there's 1.5 billion people in China, there's 1.5 billion people in Africa, and there's 1.5 billion people in India. So you add those 1.5 together, and it brings you to 4.5. We have 8 billion people on the planet. 4.5 of them live in Africa, India, and China. Now, that leaves plenty of land on this globe. So how then are we overpopulated? Or is it just the wrong colors populating the world? And that's the question that I would pose to them. So, JJ, whenever you're ready, we can go ahead on with hold on, I got Darwin
number 7, right?
That's what I got some Darwin quotes for y'all, because we're starting on Darwin now. All right. Darwin says, because see, we have a lot of people who try to pretend like they know what Darwin's talking about and say he was religious, and that that he didn't have population control in his plan. When I told you he looked up to Malthus, Malthus's works, and Malthus was the population control guy. Darwin comes after him, and he starts talking about it and making up theories to back up that the unfit and imbeciles and idiots and those morons and those terminologies which they were using in slavery against the slaves. So when we came out of slavery and they created eugenics, we fit into every one of those categories because they was already using them for us when our forefathers were slaves. Call them feeble-minded, idiots, imbeciles, and things of that nature. So when they talking about that, we was never a part of the plan. We was always the ones to be exterminated or sterilized, because that was a big part of this eugenics movement, was trying to sterilize the communities, the people that they thought was unfit, to live in this society with them. So we're going to get into some Darwin quotes, and I want to show y'all, how this guy was just all over the place, and just making up his own thing, just like his forefathers before him who made up these ideologies, but like race and putting us into classifications, like Linnaeus and Blumenbach. So we're going to get into some of these quotes here. All right.
Okay.
Now,
So
the first one is that you hear them saying, "Oh, well, Darwin didn't say that we're great apes. We're not monkeys." Well, Darwin's quote, ladies and gentlemen, is, "Whilst, however, well behaved, a man is but a monkey shaved." That's Darwin talking. But to let these people tell you, they says Darwin never said that, right? Now, all right, here's one. All right, now we got to, you hear these type of talking points. Okay, now he says the fact of evolution is the backbone of biology. Okay, so biology, evolution is the backbone, and biology is thus in the particular position of being a science founded on a improved theory. We know theories are beliefs by definition. Is it then a science or a faith? Did you hear that, JJ? Let me read it again. The fact of evolution is the backbone of biology. This racist theory, weaponizing the term evolution and creating a theory behind it, is the backbone of biology. So that don't speak good for biology, first of all. And biology is thus in peculiar position of being a science founded on an improved theory. Is it then a science or a faith? I'd say a faith. They make fun of Christianity, they make fun of Islam, but their faith is following behind these racist theories from these dead racist so-called scholars. Hit them in the head to the head chat. Here's another one. Loading up kind of slow, y'all. Bear with me. All right. Here's another quote from Darwin. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Now, we know race is a social construct. We know today that Johann Friedrich Blumenbach created the race theory. But when we bringing up races, we're talking about black and white, or white, and all the others, okay? And the civilized races is the white man. You got to remember that some of this stuff was going on during slavery when they was talking like this. So we still 3/5 human at the time. You see what I'm saying? At the same time, the anthropomorphism, as Professor Schaffhausen has remarked, will no doubt be exterminated. The break will then be rendered wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope, than the Caucasian and some ape, as low as a baboon, instead of, at present, between the Negro and the Australian and the gorilla. So they're going to exterminate you, and then, they'll just have their kind, which is apes, which is, their kind.
Hey, these master teachers, y'all. Remember that.
That's right. That's right. They're going to exterminate these savage races. Come on, y'all. Who's the savage races, y'all? Calling us savages when they the ones out here warmongering, whoremongering, dusty, rusty, 12 layers of clothes, ain't taking a bath, mustard in a, anyway.
Now you talking about back? Yeah, you talking about back then in them days, man? That's what he's saying.
Yeah, well, this is his quotes. See, I'm trying to tell you. Yeah. Now look, they say that he didn't have a religion, right? Another quote of Darwin's is only the fittest survive, okay? So when you're talking about the unfit, you're talking about, we fit into that category. Black people fit into that category, period. We were morons. We fit into all those categories. So we was
according to Darwin.
Yeah, according to these theories, okay? Yeah. So, and they say he didn't say nothing about being in the church. Well, here's a quote from Darwin right here. I never gave up Christianity until I was 40 years of age.
Ah!
Charles Darwin.
But he gave it up though. That is, he gave it up to teach this madness. Matter of fact, he was Christian when he was teaching this madness, wasn't he?
I can't hear you, JJ.
I said he was a Christian when he was teaching his madness, wasn't he? Or did he wait?
Exactly. So faith did not deter these fools from creating these theories. Okay? Yeah. And, it ain't no different than the Ku Klux Klan. Forgotten country. Forgotten country. Yeah, man. Go ahead with that. You know what I'm saying? You can't separate the man from what he believed in and what he did, and you sitting here trying to promote and tell people what Darwin said and can't even quote the man right.
Hey, huh?
Okay, now here's the last one for Darwin right here. With savages, the weak in body and mind are soon eliminated. We civilized men, on the other hand, do our utmost to check the process of elimination. We build asylums for the imbeciles, the maimed, and the sick. Thus, the weak members of civilized societies propagate their kind. No one who has attended to breeding of domestic animals will doubt that this must be highly injurious to the race of man. Hardly anyone is ignorant as to allow his worst animals to breed.
And that came from Charles Darwin.
Hold on, JJ. Wait a minute. Let me finish this point. That's the same thing that Malthus was saying, ladies and gentlemen. Malthus was saying we shouldn't have asylums for them. We shouldn't build asylums for the imbeciles or the maimed and the sick. We shouldn't feed them, through government assistance. We should just get rid of them. Don't feed them. Don't prolong, our misery with them being on the planet as the lesser creatures, less than. So hardly anyone is ignorant as to allow his worst animals to breed. Now remember, Darwin was calling us monkeys and all kinds of crazy stuff, saying we evolved from, I don't say we evolved from bananas. I mean, they be just saying shit, you know, they just be saying stuff, just making it up.
Bananas. He told me the banana was our cousin, man. I said, well, goddamn it, today, I'm gonna put some bananas in my goddamn we call them frosted flakes. I'm gonna be a cannibal.
Yeah. That's right. Unga bunga bunga, nigga. But you know, now we're gonna look at a video, one of JJ's favorites. It's the one How Eugenics Erased Black History, JJ. That's where we starting at with the videos. That's where we ended up with the videos right there, brother.
You got me so this ain't Fossil Mysterious Origins, what I got on the screen? It's not on the screen? That's your number. That's
Fossils, Mr.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's
all right,
what it is.
All right,
okay,
cool.
That's my next video. That's a 9-minute, 34-second video we're going to watch. And it's showing the top people in this field telling you that evolution couldn't have happened in the way that they said it because there's not enough time. You know what I'm saying? All these made-up theories, there's not enough time. And how they say that it took a slow process for the, for people to become like from single-celled organism coming in off a space rock to a human.
Yeah.
All right. To a banana first. I forgot the banana.
Yeah.
You got to remember. I said we was kin to bananas.
He said
from
single-celled
organism to a banana to a monkey to a man. All these stages, there ain't enough time for all this shit to happen. They've lost their minds. But you know, we're gonna see that right now. So okay, JJ, if you ready to play that video, brother?
Yeah. Shout out to Miss Tay in the building. You know, one of the Lions in members. Go ahead, Queen. Say something before we get going. Miss Tay, you there?
Hey now, it's Miss TJ. How you doing today, JJ?
I'm hanging in there. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just sitting here joining in with the chat. You know me, I like to just look up stuff as people are talking. So that's what I'm doing for the audience. So that way we can all stay on the same page with these scholars.
Right. She's another one of our fact checkers and researchers. All right, let's get it in. Oh, let me get to the meat and potatoes, man.
It's nice to have you up on the panel with us, sis.
All right, here we go.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Damn.
No problem.
It's still on the screen?
Yep, it's still up there, JJ. It says fossils, mystery origins.
Going through the facts and how evolution explains them all so well.
Evolution. And by studying these fossils, we can see how organisms have changed throughout the past, as we're able to see the small incremental changes that took place over millions of years.
The farther back we go, the more we see that everything alive has evolved from a single starting point.
With the fact of evolution,
we're able to see small incremental changes.
Fossils provide really good evidence for evolution.
Yeah, that's what I was taught in school too. But is the fossil
Make the screen white.
evidence for evolution? I asked Dr. Gunter Beckley, a fossil expert. He has discovered 180 new species and published over 160 scientific papers.
It is often believed that the fossil record is great support for Darwin's theory. Actually, this is not the case at all. The theory predicts
This is not the case at all. Especially when you got other things going on in the equation, like the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion.
Hey, did y'all? What's going on?
You can't see it?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, hold up.
Can y'all hear me?
Brother, hold up. Kareem.
Yeah, I used that video a couple times. They don't mind people, but that's fine. That's fine. But the reason why I asked
they actually, you can see in the receipts that they actually tripping off of us using it. But go ahead. On the thing.
Thank you, Kareem. I appreciate you. See, that's why I said the backbone, ladies and gentlemen. That's the backbone right there. What I stopped it for, JJ, was did you hear this man's credentials? 200 different species and wrote like 150, 160 different books on the subject. One of the top minds in this field.
Yeah.
So that's who you're listening to right now, okay? This is not just some, you know, you can go back and check the man's credentials, look him up if you want to.
Yeah.
All right? All right.
What's his name again? Did they say his name? I missed his name. I go back.
You can rewind it just a little bit, you know.
Yeah, so just say his name.
15 seconds.
Hold up. There you
go.
For evolution, I asked Dr. Gunther Beckley, a fossil expert. He has discovered
Dr. Gunther Beckley. Yeah, Dr. Gunther Beckley is right on the screen. All right, so we bring out the top guys.
180 new species in the fossil record and published over 160 scientific papers.
It is often believed that the fossil record is great support for Darwin's theory. Actually, this is not the case at all. The theory predicts slow changes, but the
Dr. Gunther ain't playing with y'all. Go ahead, Gunther.
The fossil record shows rapid changes. The theory predicts that new forms accumulate by addition of little small steps, but the fossil record shows they appear out of nothing suddenly.
Let's start with the most famous sudden appearance of life forms in geologic history, the Cambrian explosion. Geologist Casey Luskin explains.
Nearly all of the major living animals.
I challenged them on this. I said, well, how is this evolution supposed to be like a minimal type of thing? You know, and then we got this Cambrian explosion. That was when I called our Ankh, and then Sebastian came up there, and we did a whole show on Sarnetta. Let's go.
Phyla appear abruptly in the Cambrian period in a geological eye blink, a 5 to 10 million year window. In the Cambrian explosion, we see many diverse body plans appear without any direct evolutionary precursors. In fact, one invertebrate
It's supposed to happen gradually. How did all these just pop up?
zoology textbook says that the animal phyla appear fully formed, such that the fossil record is of no help to understanding how these species and these diverse body plans arose.
That fully formed, Cedric.
But is the Cambrian explosion the exception? Because we usually hear
the fossil record clearly demonstrates that organisms don't suddenly appear.
The phenomenon of sudden appearances in the fossil record is not just an exceptional case, but actually is a pattern that is found everywhere. The origin of life, the origin of photosynthesis, the Avalon explosion, the Great Ordovician biodiversification event, the Silurian-Devonian terrestrial revolution, the Devonian...
Did y'all hear? Let's hear that first one. Hold on, he said. No, one before that one. Hold up. Because we're going to slow it down for you. You probably never heard this in your life. You hear me? Right there.
No, he heard it because I beat him up on it on Yasha's channel. Over there on Yasha's channel. I played that over on Yasha's channel for him because I asked Yasha, does he want to see a video debunking what Cedric was saying? And Cedric was right there.
So speak on this a little bit. What was this about?
Like I said, he was over there talking this evolution and monkey madness. And I said, do you want me to show you a video that's going to debunk all this, Yasha? And Yasha was like, Terry, he was like, yeah, send it to me. And I put it in the chat, and he pulled it up and played this 9-minute video for Cedric. So, yeah, he's seen it.
The
and
great...
he's still promoting this crazy monkey-minded nincompoop nonsense.
What's wrong with him? This is the Great Ordovician biodiversification event. Ordovician. Yeah. Influences of geography, paleoclimate, and paleoecology. So this is I'm going to look into this. Go ahead.
Biodiversification event, the Silurian-Devonian terrestrial revolution, the Devonian nekton revolution, and the odontote revolution, the Carboniferous insect explosion.
All these just popped up out of nowhere without any, like I said, Mike, where's your microevolution on this?
The Triassic explosions, the origin of flowering plants, the origin of butterflies, the neo-avian revolution of modern birds, the placental mammal radiation, the origin of the genus Homo, and finally the Upper Paleolithic human revolution.
Now that is a serious list of big jumps in the fossil record.
If you look at the technical literature, we can see references to a fish explosion, a bird explosion, a dinosaur explosion, a mammal explosion. And even the origin of our own genus Homo has been referred to as a Big Bang theory of human evolution, because we see throughout the fossil record different types of organisms appearing abruptly without this gradual change that Darwin's theory predicted.
In the middle of the Carboniferous period, we find the first flying insects. And the striking thing is there are no fossil precursors for that. There are no credible transitions. Just presto, this fully articulated marvels.
Just how Cedric and Ankh and Juju, whatever your name is, y'all got some explaining to do.
Lying through your teeth.
Look, what'd you say? What'd you say? Lucy! Say you got some explaining to do.
Lucy, you got some explaining to do. They found Lucy's hip bones down and made it to look like she could walk upright. They did that. That was recreations and shit. Like Piltdown Man, that Piltdown Man skeleton that they found. They put a monkey's jaw on a human and try to pass it off as real science.
I'm fell for it. Hey, and Cedric running around here talking about this is the truth. You know, sit your ass down somewhere. Let's go.
How bad is the fossil?
How immature and ignorant we are.
Yeah. You believe in the goddamn fairy tale?
You're out here tap dancing for these racist theories.
That they call you Cedric Jangles. Bojangles.
Sammy Davis Jr. and who was the other one? The light skinned
Gregory Hines looking.
Yeah, Gregory Hines and Sammy Davis Jr. ain't got shit on you when you out here tap dancing.
Bojangles.
Racist.
Cedric Jangles.
So-called scholars.
Let's keep going.
Fossil record for Darwin's theory, anthropologist Jeffrey Schwartz, who supports evolution, is blunt. Most major groups of organisms, he says, appear in the fossil record, full-blown and raring to go, in contradiction to Darwin's depiction of evolution. Some scientists say the
Did y'all hear that?
transitions in the fossil record just look abrupt, and that we'll find the gradual transitions if we just keep on digging. Beckley thinks that explanation is no longer credible.
Multitasking over here. Go ahead.
He said that the person who supports evolution is telling you that these fossils just popped up out of these animals and creatures and insects just popped up out of nowhere all at once with no
transitional fossils
before them, slowly, gradually becoming them. They just popped up out of nowhere.
Come on, y'all gotta stop playing with us, man. I mean, this don't make any. This is like just something they made up, bro. The dots don't connect. You see what I'm saying?
And here's why. Imagine you have a new hobby and you walk along the beach and you collect starfish and shells and snails. Every day you find something new, but over time, repetition sets in. And ultimately, you reach a day where you only find over and over again what you already found. And then you know that you have sampled enough to know what is out there. Exactly this method is applied in paleontology to statistically test the completeness of the fossil record. It's called the collector's curve. In most groups of organisms, we know that the fossil record is sufficiently complete to be sure that the gaps that we see are not artifacts of undersampling or of an incomplete fossil record, but actually data to be explained.
Some evolutionists basically admit that the many expected transitional fossils don't actually exist. They
and then they want to come up and try to tell you, oh, well, this is the missing ancestor. This is the transitional fossil. You have Isabio and what's his name, Pinkbeard and Kyle and Mudawa, Ankh and Sean P. and all these old characters, man, misrepresenting really truths. You know, there's nothing truthful about what they teach you because they just been bamboozled themselves.
argued that the fossil record simply didn't have enough time to record the transitions. That was the view of two leading evolutionists who proposed a theory called punctuated equilibrium,
which said that basically species change so abruptly they don't have enough time to leave any transitional forms, and that was how they accounted for the lack of transitional forms in the fossil record.
But punctuated equilibrium has a problem. If major transitions really took genetic copying errors to accumulate into beneficial features, and evolutionary theory already faces a huge time crunch.
When we do mathematical calculations using standard textbook methods of population genetics, there simply is not enough time in the fossil record for random mutation and natural selection to produce the changes that we observe.
Let's look at whale evolution. Whales are said to have evolved from a land mammal in under 11 million years, but was that enough time to produce all the mutations required to create a whale? Richard Sternberg has 2 PhDs in biology and was a researcher at the Smithsonian.
We got guys from the Smithsonian coming out, Richard Steinberg, man. These guys, y'all notice this, ladies and gentlemen, these guys don't bring you nobody. They just run their goddamn on lip and think we supposed to just, okay, well, he said it. That's credible.
Evolution of whales in detail.
Imagine you were going to take your Volkswagen and have a submersible that could go down
Your favorite one, ain't it?
a few thousand feet. Well, how many engineering changes would you have to make to your vehicle to accomplish that? Well, it's similar, going from a four-legged fully...
Go ahead.
Yeah. So do you see what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen? They're saying that it would be like you dropping a Volkswagen into the ocean. And with all the good things in the world coming to play, with no help now, no help. This is no help. The Volkswagen goes into the ocean, and then all of a sudden, after a million years, it becomes a submarine. They're saying that that's just like a four-legged mammal jumping into the water, becoming a whale. Do you know how many probabilities and possibilities and good things have to happen in order for that Volkswagen to become a submarine?
Yeah.
By itself, or a four-legged mammal to jump into the water and become a whale by itself?
Right.
It just doesn't match up. You don't got enough time for one, and it's craziness. Because all these positives are happening in order for this to happen. Because it's by chance. Just by chance that, this thing jumps in the water and becomes a whale.
Come on.
With no help, no support, okay.
So wait a minute. Whoa. Now you got to let the audience know, because you got some new people, in the audience. Who's running around saying that an animal jumped into the ocean and became a whale? I need to know.
A four-legged mammal. That's what the evolutionary theory of a whale is. Brother.
You got to be kidding me. All right, let's keep
Okay.
Going. Damn.
That's how a whale evolved.
He didn't start off as a whale in the ocean, like a little tadpole type character, nothing like that. He started off on land, lost his limbs, y'all, and just started floating around deep in the ocean.
Listen to what they say.
All right, let's go, man. This is ridiculous, man.
terrestrial mammal to an organism that can complete its life cycle out at sea, give birth there, suckle the young, dive down 1,000 feet or so, hunt fishes, etc.
Just how many changes are we talking about here?
I would say from 10,000 to 20,000, maybe more traits had to change.
Could unguided evolution engineer that many changes in the time allowed? How about even a single new body part?
Let's say the origin of tail fluke. So if you imagine, say, that 2 genes are involved, according to some estimates, that would take about 43 million years for those 2 changes. There simply is not enough time.
In this case, we can prove mathematically that it is impossible that Darwinian evolution was the mechanism by which these supposed whale transitional forms evolved in the series.
In other words, Darwinian evolution can't even engineer a tail fluke in the time allowed, never mind the tens of thousands of changes needed to convert the land mammal into a fully operational whale. So if Darwinian mechanisms can't get it done in the time available, what can? Stephen Meyer, author of the New York Times bestseller Darwin's Doubt, explains.
Whenever you see...
Hey, okay. This is Stephen Meyer, PhD. I brought him out. He also supports intelligent design. They try to say that there's some case that they had proves that since the court rejected the intelligent design, they're saying that proves the non-existence of God. This is what Pandemics tried to bring to a debate. Now it's just on that ruling right there that they don't figure that it was scientific enough. I got some information on that too. Go ahead and just keep talking.
Yeah, This is Stephen Meyer. We was talking about him, and in Terry's chat, he said, "Oh, well, he believes in religion. He believes in Christianity or whatever, you know."
Who said that, Cedric?
Cedric, yeah. When I showed that on Terry's channel,
yeah,
it was like last year, you know, and he said that he was a Christian, so you know you can't believe him. But look at all the credentials. He's a PhD and all these other things. You know, philosophy and science at Cambridge University.
Right.
You're always bigging up Cambridge, ain't you? But let me say something to you about you saying this man had religion. Guess who else had religion? Charles Darwin. Just proved it. So you know that argument don't hold no water, and you can't take away what this man did in school. All of the accolades that they're showing you right here about Stephen Meyer, you can't take those away just because he's a Christian.
Yes.
That ain't got nothing to do with it.
No, it don't.
Because it didn't stop Darwin from lying with his theories. I didn't stop. He said I didn't stop being a Christian until he was 40. Kick him in the mouth, JJ. All right, go ahead, brother.
All right.
New forms of life arising, you also have to have new information. It's very much like in our computer world. If you want to give your computer a new function, you have to provide information in the form of software. And something very similar is true in life. If you want to build a new form of animal life, you have to have new organs and tissues. But new organs and tissues require new genetic information and other forms of information.
And this information has to come from somewhere. We know it where it does come from. If it is software programmers, if it is architects, if it is engineers, if it is artists, they are all capable of creating something because they are intelligent minds. And intelligent minds are the only causes we know in the whole known universe which are capable of creating this effect. This is not based on an argument from ignorance, but it's just based on a rational inference to the best explanation.
Scientists have been studying the fossil record for hundreds of years, and the evidence is now clear. If we just take off our materialist glasses and look, living things full of function, purpose, and design do not just appear by accident. A mind played a role in the creation of new forms of life, including you and me.
Let me say something about Stephen Meyer and intelligent design and stuff like that. Okay, so the 2005 Dover trial, Kitchener versus Dover Area School District, where intelligent design was challenged as a scientific theory. It was challenged as a scientific theory, but that's just because the judge ruled against it. That doesn't prove that there was not an existence of God. See, so the ruling, Judge Jones' decision, Judge John E. Jones III ruled that the intelligent design is not science, but rather a form of creationism that violates the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Lack of scientific merit. That's what he said. The court found that intelligent design lacks scientific merit and is not a viable alternative to evolution. The implications is separation of church and state. The ruling reinforces separation of church and states in public education. Scientific community stance. The scientific community largely views intelligent design as a pseudoscience, and the ruling reinforced this perspective. But this ruling prove that there is no creator? The Kitchener and Dover Area School District ruling does not prove or disprove the existence of a creator. Sebastian, I told you this. The court decisions focus on whether intelligent design is a scientific theory. A theory, though, because even theories are not absolute, not conclusive. They can be taught in public schools, not on the non-existence of a creator. So that decision had nothing to do with the existence or non-existence of a creator. But ladies and gentlemen, these people are trying to use that when people try to talk about intelligent design. Okay? So the legal scientific context, real quick. The ruling was based on the legal and scientific context of the case, specifically the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution and definition of science. And like I said, it's an ongoing debate, philosophical and theological discussions. Debate about existence of a creator or intelligent design continues in philosophical and theological and scientific communities. Scientific inquiry into the origins of the universe and life on Earth remains an active area of research and explanation. Okay, so like I say, the rule here's
everything happened by chance.
Right.
Everything just popped up, and slowly, gradually evolved from single-celled organisms on rocks, y'all. That's an outer space story too, because these single-celled organisms is the spaceships coming from outer space, landing on Earth, and then getting in the water and becoming a frog, and just all the different lies that they tell. They, like I said, Unc said we cousin with the banana. So
So how you gonna right? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said, how you gonna not intelligent
Get
design?
the Earth, become a banana.
Yeah.
Become a frog that jumps on the land. Then the frog becomes a turtle, and then the turtle becomes a monkey, and then the monkey becomes a man. That's all a lie. It's all a lie, and you're promoting it. You're tap dancing. Click, clack. You hear them tap. You can hear them tapping right now. Tap, tap, tap. You can hear them tap dancing right now for these, racist oppressors. Who's trying to get away from the biblical theory and say that, we different species and blacks and whites are different, and guess what? We evolved different, and y'all come from all that is a bunch of lies, and they just keep on promoting the negative nonsense to our people. I'm tired of you, and I'm busting you in your head till you white me. You can pretend like it's funny, Cedric. You can put all the stupid comments in there you want to, brother. But the world's finding out it's the stuff that y'all been promoting. It's nonsense. So have fun with that.
Right.
Go ahead, JJ.
This video almost over right here. Cedric peeking around. He don't get up here and say nothing.
We are not materialists. We see the human soul. We experience love. We live with purpose. We fight for justice. We are the quiet majority, and we will be quiet no longer.
Good video. All right, go ahead and elaborate a little more. And Cedric.
We could show that Big Bang video that was up and after that one, but what I'm saying, we ain't going there. That ain't a part of this presentation. We're gonna go ahead and go to how eugenics erased Black history. And we're gonna see some of the leading players in this eugenics movement and how it transcended through governments and universities and presidents were on board. Just everybody at that time was on board. The systemic racism being promoted all around the world at this time, and we're going to see how we're going to get a glance on how how it was promoted and pushed throughout American society. All right, JJ, if you got that one ready, how eugenics erased Black history, brother, and you got the timestamps. The first one is 349 to 1847. I mean, 349 to 1847.
All right. 349. Okay.
1847.
Uh-oh.
Then we'll stop it at 1847 because that's where they tell you how we've seen them changing their the names of their stuff because it got so bad that America was like, nah, we can't deal with that, so they changed it. So at 1847 it shows where they changed eugenics to genetics, brother. Oh my goodness, eugenics to genetics. All right.
Yeah. Hold up. What number is that? 8, probably. Let's see.
How eugenics erased Black history. Yep. 349 to 1847, brother.
Yeah. Man, come on, man. All right, here we go. Right there. 349 to 1847. Yeah, of course Cedric ain't had no. But he's just gonna, do his troll thing.
For years up, then it's gonna mess up, I guess. That's why they keep the same old lines over and over again. And they build up this following of people who just follow them blindly and don't go behind them and do no research on what they're saying. Just following blindly behind them and taking up for them, ready to fight for them. Oh, Uncle them's right. Uncle's the leader. Uncle's this. Yeah. Uncle don't want no smoke.
Y'all see that? Let's see.
Not yet. I can't. I got like a 7-second delay.
Yeah, I don't know why it ain't popping up. Do tab. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, we'll go.
Yeah, I have to get my baby.
But instead focus mostly on the transgressions of white people. Please don't think that I'm diminishing the
Oh, go ahead, Kramer. You gotta meet your kid?
No, I had to already. That's why I couldn't put it up there. It's already done.
Oh, okay. All right, so we ready. Here we go.
atrocities committed against white people. However, unlike black people, in what are presently majority white countries, they do not continue to suffer systematically. I will also share why I believe Mr. Black chose this course of action as we go along in this video. So, I don't know how many of you watching know what the word eugenics means. So let's take a look at the definition provided by the online Merriam-Webster dictionary. All right, so eugenics is a noun, and it goes on to say the practice or advocacy of controlled selective breeding of human populations as by sterilization to improve the population's genetic composition. In 1883, Francis Galton in England coined the term eugenics to encompass the idea of modification of natural selection through the selective breeding for the improvement of humankind. Jeremiah A. Brandes. A half-century ago, eugenics became associated with Hitler, genocide, and master race theories, and its reputation has never recovered. Dan Seligman. Then it goes on to say, after the Second World War, eugenics became a word to be hedged with caveats in Britain and virtually a dirty word in the United States, where it had long been identified with racism. Daniel J. Cavels. Now let's also define the term white supremacy. I will again use the definition provided by the online Merriam-Webster dictionary. All right, so white supremacy is a noun, and it goes on to say the belief that the white race is inherently superior to other races and that white people should have control over people of other races. The alt-right is a reactionary conservative movement. It is characterized by an embrace of fascism, white supremacy, and misogyny. Constance Grady. Under number 2, it says the social, economic, and political systems that collectively enable white people to maintain power over people of other races. William Kelly turned his considerable intellect and imagination to the question of what it is like to be white in this country and what it is like for all Americans to live under the conditions of white supremacy. Catherine Schultz. All right, so those are the 2 definitions I'd like us to keep in mind as we go through this video. I have been trying to figure out how and why history was rewritten, and beyond that, how it was adopted worldwide. Well, folks, this video will delve into.
Now you see that they were saying that eugenics dealt with sterilization and selective breeding, family. Like I said, that's the headline that I wanted to add, not onto the title, but to this portion of my part 2 of my presentation, because you're going to be hearing a lot of that about population. You hear about population, the population, they're worried about the population. That's where Malthus comes in. So that's why I brought Malthus up, just so we can tie all this stuff together and the origins of it. But yeah, selective breeding, you hear a lot of this, you're going to hear more. So let's go ahead, JJ.
There we go. Trying to multitask. I got you. Oh, man. Okay.
To exactly those 2 questions, how and why. So now that we've dealt with the definitions of eugenics and white supremacy, let me move on to say, as I've conducted my research over the last several years, trying to figure out at what point did American society change. I kept coming back to the end of the American Civil War and a time during Reconstruction. Some of this information was covered in my last video, The Black Southern Confederacy. Looking at the time period of approximately 12 years between 1865 and approximately 1877 is when the country underwent a radical shift. Not only did men labeled as Negroes obtain the ability to vote as a direct consequence of the North winning the Civil War, but also slavery/indentured servitude for people labeled as Negroes and people labeled as white was illegal in the United States after the ratification of the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The ruling class that depended on slavery/indentured servitude before the Civil War now had to pay wages for labor. This seriously disrupted the way of life and how these families made their wealth, attained their social status and influence. Again, I must remind you, the wealthy were not just the non-melanated people, aka white people. It was also Europeans of color, aka Black Europeans, that were very much a part of this ruling class. With the end of the war, Congress passed the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. Then Reconstruction was put into place by the Republican-led administration of Abraham Lincoln. And please, don't confuse it with today's Republican Party. It was done to try to right the wrongs done to those who were enslaved by the societal structure and the rule of law that had been put in place throughout the United States, especially in the southern states for decades. Unfortunately, Reconstruction efforts that held real promise for formerly enslaved people did not last. The equality promise did not come to pass. All right, so you may ask yourselves, what happened to the Reconstruction efforts that the Republican Party put in place? Again, let me remind you, the Republican Party before and after the Civil War was comprised of many Black men. I show you this fact in several of my previous videos. However, as enthusiasm for the Southern Reconstruction efforts waned due to many of the federal and
Good.
You see all those black people in government? The pictures of these black people in government?
Yep.
You see the drawings right here? And the first coup to take the blacks out of government was in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, family. That was the first coup.
state legislature, city councils, and other official positions being full of elected Black officials. They did.
And then they come along and, run the black man out, start propaganda and saying the black man does to the white woman like they always do, and kick the black man out of office and said that the black man would never lead us again. So I guess they was wrong because, well, if you call Obama black, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, go ahead, JJ.
All right.
Pay attention to the undercurrent of white supremacy and the adversity to Black rule gaining traction, especially. So what was the Compromise of 1877, you may ask? Well, according to History.com, the Compromise of 1877 was an informal agreement between Southern Democrats and allies of the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes to settle the results of the 1876 presidential election and mark the end of the Reconstruction era. Immediately after the presidential election of 1876, it became clear that the outcome of the race hinged largely on the disputed returns from Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, the only three states in the South with Reconstruction-era Republican governors still in power. As a bipartisan congressional commission debated over the outcome early in 1877, allies of the Republican Party candidate Rutherford Hayes met in secret with moderate Southern Democrats in order to negotiate acceptance of Hayes's election. The Democrats agreed not to block Hayes's victory on the condition that the Republicans withdraw all federal troops from the South, thus consolidating Democratic control over the region. As a result of the so-called Compromise of 1877, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina became Democratic once again, effectively bringing an end to the Reconstruction era. Again, let me remind you, the Democratic Party at that time was the party of the South, aka the old Confederacy. It is not the Democratic Party of today. What did occur was lawless violence against Black men, women, and children across the United States. According to the EJI, EqualJusticeInitiative.org, during the 12 years from 1865 to 1877, thousands of Black people were killed, attacked, sexually assaulted, and terrorized by white mobs, and individuals were shielded from arrest and prosecution. These white perpetrators of violence were never held accountable. On the contrary, they were often celebrated. Also, according to the EJI.org, in a series of devastating decisions, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked congressional efforts to protect people of color and instead ceded control to the same white Southerners who used terror and violence to stop Black people from participating in political processes. They upheld new laws codifying racial hierarchy and embraced the new constitutional order defined by states' rights. Continuing from the EJI.org website, within a decade after the Civil War, Congress began to abandon the promises of assistance to millions of formerly enslaved. Violence, mass lynchings, and lawlessness enabled white Southerners to create a regime of white supremacy and Black disenfranchisement alongside a new economic order that continued to exploit Black labor. White officials in the North and West similarly rejected racial equality, codifying racial discrimination, and occasionally embraced the same tactics of violent racial control seen in the South. Again, as I have mentioned in many of my videos, there's a reason most students do not receive any instruction on this part of American history. In my opinion, there's a concerted effort to keep people ignorant, so white people may feel like they attained all their wealth via legitimate means and that Black people, for some reason, have never been able to get it together. I have also covered in some of my videos the documented Black towns that were destroyed, flooded, or massacred by lawless white people that often used one accusation of crime to justify displacing by force entire towns and or killing or lynching many of its Black citizens. I'm not going to go deeper into this subject for the sake of time. However, I challenge you to research slavery/indentured servitude, Reconstruction, and sundown towns.
You want to say something about that real quick? Indigenous?
Yeah. Indentured servitude, y'all, we know what slavery is, but indentured servitude, indentured means to sign a contract to work for someone for a certain amount of time. So every time you fill out your application, you become indentured, okay? And America runs off debt slavery because, credit, when they say credit, credit is a debt cycle after a debt cycle after a debt cycle. So we went from slavery in the plantations to debt slavery today, and we're the consumers. Consumer also means debt slave. We're the ones consuming and buying up stuff that we don't need because they put out these, this propaganda and make everybody want it. And you're not this if you don't have this, and putting social statuses just because of what you own. All of this is by design. But indentured means to work for someone for a certain amount of time, and that's how the white people before the slavery, when they was bringing them over here to America, they was working them so hard that they was killing them too. See, but they would sign like 7 years, in 3 years, 4 years, they'd be dead because they was working them so hard and wasn't giving them no breaks. So it didn't just start with us. They started on their own over in Europe first, and brought it over here and brought them over here slaves too. Okay, so yeah, let's go.
All right.
On your own. It may open your eyes to why things are the way they are in the United States, and why, to this day, governors like Rick DeSantis don't want you to know true history in the United States. DeSantis recently signed legislation to stop Florida citizens from understanding their own history. Wow, it's 2023 and still the United States refuses to come to grips with the truth. Anyway, I could go on, but I don't want to lose you. So how did eugenics erase Black history? I'm going to read the introduction of the book I mentioned, War on the Weak by Edwin Black. This should give you some idea of what the eugenics movement was all about. Just be forewarned, it's somewhat lengthy, but I feel it's necessary in order to understand what went on in the United States and abroad during the onset of the height of the eugenics movement. Just as a disclaimer, I don't receive any compensation for talking about this book, nor have I ever been contacted by the author or its publisher. Okay, so the introduction goes on to state, voices haunted the pages of every book. This particular book, however, speaks of the never born, for those whose questions have never been heard, for those who have never existed. Throughout the first 6 decades of the 20th century, hundreds of thousands of Americans and untold numbers of others were not permitted to continue their families by reproducing. Selected because of their ancestry, national origin, race, or religion, they were forcibly sterilized, wrongly committed to mental institutions, where they died in great numbers, prohibited from marrying, and sometimes even unmarried by state bureaucrats. In America, this battle wiped out whole ethnic groups, was not fought by armies with guns, nor by hate sects at the margins. Rather, this pernicious white-gloved war was prosecuted by esteemed professors, elite universities, wealthy industrialists, and government officials included in a racist, pseudoscientific movement called eugenics. The purpose? Create a superior Nordic race. To perpetuate the campaign, widespread academic fraud
Nordic race. They don't sound like us.
combined with almost unlimited corporate philanthropy to establish the biological rationales for persecution, employing a haze amalgam of guesswork, gossip, falsified information, and polysyllabic academic arrogance. The eugenics movement slowly constructed a national bureaucratic and juridical infrastructure to cleanse America of its unfit. Suspicious intelligence tests, colloquially known as IQ tests, were invented to justify incarceration of a group labeled feeble-minded. Often the so-called feeble-minded were just shy, too good-natured to be taken seriously, or simply spoke the wrong language, or were the wrong color. Mandatory sterilization laws were enacted in some 27 states to prevent targeted individuals from reproducing more of their kind. Marriage prohibition laws proliferated throughout the country to stop race mixing. Collusive litigation was taken to the U.S. Supreme Court, which sanctified eugenics and its tactics. The goal was to immediately sterilize 14 million people in the United States and millions more worldwide, the lower 10th, and then continuously eradicate the lowest remaining 10th until only a pure Nordic race remained. Ultimately, some 60,000 Americans were coercively sterilized, and the total is probably much higher. No one knows how many marriages were thwarted by state felony statutes. Although much of the persecution was simply racism, ethnic hatred, and academic elitism, eugenics wore the mantle of respectable science to mask its true character. The victims of eugenics were poor urban dwellers and rural white trash from New England to California, immigrants from across Europe, blacks, Jews, Mexicans, Native Americans, epileptics, alcoholics, petty criminals, the mentally ill, and anyone else who did not resemble the blonde and blue-eyed Nordic ideal the eugenics movement glorified. Eugenics contaminated many otherwise worthy social, medical, and educational causes, from the birth control movement to the development of psychology to urban sanitation. Psychologists persecuted their patients, teachers stigmatized their students, charitable associations clamored to send those in need of help to lethal chambers they hoped would be constructed. Immigration assistance bureaus convened to send the most needy to sterilization mills. Leaders of the ophthalmology profession conducted a long and chilling political campaign to round up and coercively sterilize every relative of every American with a vision problem. All of this churned throughout America years before the Third Reich rose in Germany. Eugenics targeted all mankind, so of course its scope was global. American eugenic evangelists spawned similar movements and practices throughout Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Forced sterilization laws and regimes took root on every continent. Each local American eugenic ordinance or statute from Virginia to Oregon was promoted internationally as yet another precedent to be emulated by the international movement. A tight-knit network of mainstream medical and eugenical journals, international meetings, and conferences kept the generals and soldiers of eugenics up to date and armed with their nation's next legislative opportunity. Eventually, America's eugenic movement spread to Germany as well, where it caught the fascination of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement. Under Hitler, eugenics careened beyond any American eugenicist's dream. National Socialism transcended America's quest for a superior Nordic race into Hitler's drive for an Aryan master race. The Nazis were fond of saying National Socialism is nothing but applied biology. And in 1934, the Richmond Times-Dispatch quoted a prominent American eugenicist as saying, "The Germans are beating us."
Yeah, you may say the Germans are beating us at our own game because they were the ones who created eugenics over here in America. Francis Galton, first cousin of Charles Darwin. And you see how, the selective breeding, the terms fit and unfit keep coming into play, and the unfit needs to be sterilized and wiped out so we can, save, the land for the civilized races. And you heard him say that, that keep on, all around the world, keep on sterilizing people till you get to this. They call them the lower 1/10. which they are, because they're only 9 or 10% of the world's population, white people. So you're the lower 1/10, because 90% out of 100, that leaves 10%, right? And guess who's that 10%? The white people. But they called us the lower 10th. You see how they flip it around and try to make it seem like they're the ones who's saving, they're the leaders, and take, what they are and add it to us. Oh, they're imbeciles, idiots, they're the lower 1/10. Changing the narrative, making it say whatever you want it to say when we know that you're only 10% of the population. So you're the lower 1/10. And how you're talking these sterilization mills, and the Nazis started using it and bigging up Galton and Margaret Sanger and all these people for their works in America. And then they're congratulating the Germans. Oh, the Germans are beating us at our own game. They're doing such a good job over there. Go ahead, JJ.
At our own game. The gypsies, the rape of Poland, and the decimation of all Europe. But none of America's far-reaching scientific racism would have risen above ignorant rants without the backing of corporate philanthropic largesse. Within these pages, you will discover the sad truth of how scientific rationales that drove killer doctors at Auschwitz were first concocted on Long Island at the Carnegie Institution's eugenic enterprise at Cold Spring Harbor. You will see that during the pre-war Hitler regime, the Carnegie Institution, through its Cold Spring Harbor complex, enthusiastically propagandized for the Nazi regime and even distributed anti-Semitic Nazi party films to American high schools. And you will see the links between the Rockefeller Foundation's massive financial grants and the German scientific establishment that began the eugenics programs that were finished by Mengele at Auschwitz. Only after the truth about Nazi extermination became known did the American eugenics movement fade. American eugenics institutions rushed to change their names from eugenics to genetics. Okay, so I know that was a lot. However, there is a lot to unpack when it comes to the unspoken history of the United States. So for most of this video, I will be quoting from Edwin Black's book. In order to compile the research.
2 minutes. All right. Okay.
Yeah, because it says how eugenics was changed to genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just like Margaret Sanger's Negro Project being changed to Planned Parenthood. Just like Charles Darwin's book being the title being rewritten to The Origin of Species, when it was on the origin of species by means of natural selection or preservation of favored races. That's selective breeding. Preservation of favored races? And let's ask ourselves, who are the ones who's choosing these favored races? But they'll tell you that it's natural. This happened naturally. This is a natural process. Oh, through natural selection. That's what they say. And I punch them in the mouth with, no, it's selective breeding. As they sterilizing the brown people and the white people, trying to get them to mate, but they're even sterilizing their own because they calling them imbeciles and idiots too. The country, hill folk, they call them they call them the lower 10th too. All right, this was promoted all around the world as they're promoting your democracy and letting the government take over so they can manipulate the minds of the people without a king being your leader or a queen, see, because we're coming to America, see, right? So we're creating our own, the government. We're putting the government out in front instead of the king. You see what I'm saying? We're promoting this false narrative of science during the 1800s, 1700s, during our slavery time. Do you see? All of this shit is connected. There are all of these agencies, the government, your presidents, the schools, the colleges, the states, everybody promoting this nonsense to the world. Go ahead, JJ.
All right.
Research, Mr. Black utilized a
next video, right? Next video. Indigenous.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to 22 minutes now.
Okay.
We're going to stay on this one for a second because
Okay, go
I have
ahead.
to show you.
Yeah. 22.
So we're going to 22 minutes now. I just wanted you to stop it right there because I wanted them to hear the part where he said eugenics changed to genetics. All right.
Okay.
Network of dozens of researchers.
It said eugenics was changed to genetics.
Right.
Because they knew the name was bad. If you could just play that, and I won't ask you to rewind no more, but if you could just replay that, go to like 1840 and just let it play from there, and we can just let it rock from there. But you'll hear them say how eugenics was changed to genetics, okay?
All right.
And they did it
At the Carnegie institutions.
over in Nazi Germany. The Nazis had beat the word up so bad that they had to change it to genetics.
Eugenic enterprise at Cold Spring Harbor. You will see that during the pre-war Hitler regime, the Carnegie Institution, through its Cold Spring Harbor complex, enthusiastically propagandized for the Nazi regime and even distributed anti-Semitic Nazi party films to American high schools. And you will see the links between the Rockefeller Foundation's massive financial grants and the German scientific establishment that began the eugenics programs that were finished by Mengele at Auschwitz. Only after the truth about Nazi extermination became known did the American eugenics movement fade. American eugenics institutions rushed to change their names from eugenics to genetics. Okay, so I know that was a lot. However, there is a lot to unpack when it comes to the unspoken history of the United States. So for most of this video, I will be quoting from Edwin Black's book. In order to compile the research, Mr. Black utilized a network of dozens of researchers, mostly volunteers, working in the United States, England, Germany, and Canada, unearthed some 50,000 documents and period publications from more than 40 archives, dozens of libraries, special collections, and other repositories, page 19. As I read in the introduction, eugenics was international. Why do I mention this fact? Because it goes to show how the white supremacist ideology spread to the majority of the world and why they currently believe in the whitewash history being taught in all of our educational institutions. I'm going to be paraphrasing much of this book due to the fact that it's over 600 pages. That said, I will add page numbers in case you want to find the exact wording in the book. As Mr. Black set out to research in the United States, he found archived information on eugenics at the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, the Truman State University in northern Missouri, to numerous obscure community colleges in the Appalachian states, and a long list of state archives, county historical files, and institutional archives where personal papers and period materials are stored. He also spent much time in many small private libraries and archives, such as the one maintained by Planned Parenthood. His team examined records at the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Institution. He also noted there are probably 200 important repositories in America, many of them special collections and manuscript departments of local libraries or universities. Because eugenics was administered on the local level, every state probably possessed 3 to 5 sites hosting important eugenics documentation. Mr. Black noted that many of the propaganda pamphlets used to promote eugenics in the U.S. were purged from files. However, they could still be found in British records, page 20. So that tells me that the United States has and will purge, aka destroy information they don't want people to know about or remember. Mr. Black goes on further to say, because the German and American wings collaborated so closely, the German archives clearly trace the development of German race hygiene as it emulated the American program. More importantly, because the American and German movements function as a binary, their leaders brag to one another and exchange information constantly. Therefore, he learned much about America's record by examining Reich-era files. For instance, although the number of individuals sterilized in Vermont has eluded researchers in the state, the information is readily available in the files of Nazi organizations. Still on page 20, it says, when it was finished, the journey to discover America's eugenic history had taken me from an austere highway warehouse in Vermont, where the state's official files are stacked right next to the automotive supplies and retrieved by forklift, to the architectonic British Library, to the massive Bundesarchiv in Berlin, and every type of research environment in between. Sometimes I sat in a chair in a reading room. Sometimes I poked through boxes in a basement. On to page 22, it states, when we were done, we had assembled a mountain of documentation that clearly chronicled a century of eugenic crusading by America's finest universities, most reputable scientists, most trusted professional and charitable organizations, and most revered corporation foundations. They had collaborated with Department of Agriculture and numerous state agencies to breed cattle and corn. The names defined power and prestige in America. The Carnegie Institution, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Harriman Railroad Fortune, Harvard University, Princeton University, Yale University, Stanford University, and the American Medical Association, Margaret Sanger, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Robert Yerkes, Woodrow Wilson, American Museum of Natural History, the American Genetic Association, and from the obscure Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics to the United States State Department. On page 23, Mr. Black states, when the research phase was over.
Now, is there any question that this was passed through the whole system? This is systemic racism, okay? Passed through the whole system. Being allowed to be taught is a scientific discipline. I just sat back and talk about how they big up these Ivy League schools, and they all in the mix too, right in the middle. Just like I said, they was involved with slavery. They had slaves to Georgetown. You can look up Georgetown apologizing for its part of slavery because they had slaves. Yale, Harvard, all of them had slaves. Cornell, all these people. All these different colleges, top colleges. I'm not sure of the list because I didn't write them all down, but I'm just telling you, it's showing you right here how it's going through these philanthropists like Carnegie, and they'll put their money in making sure that this shit happens. They're showing you right there to your face, and they telling you that all this was a lie. Okay? But they're promoting it anyway, promoting it to the world, and it's going around the world. The whole globe is on this. With their government. See, instead of having their king in front, they have their governments, and they're forming the government, democracy, and all this shit. All these whack ass talking points, creating a new narrative of the day for the United States to be, governed, not ruled by, monarchy. I guess you'd say. Go ahead, JJ.
I realized that less than half of the information I had assembled would ever make it into the book. Frankly, I had amassed enough information to write a freestanding book for each of the 21 chapters in this volume. It was painful to pick and choose which information would be included, but I am confident that with so many journalists throughout America now aggressively delving into eugenics, the field will soon be as broad and diverse as the investigations of the Holocaust and American slavery. At least one book could be written for each state, starting with California, which was America's most energetic eugenic state. Do you remember in the beginning of this video, I told you one of the issues I had with this book was that I felt that Mr. Black came across information that would bolster my claim that people of color ruled Europe and the United States before Reconstruction. However, like he states, he had to pick and choose what information to place in the book. Okay, so on page 24, Mr. Black states, this is the right place to note that virtually all the organizations I investigated cooperated with unprecedented.
Okay. And then now we're going to go from 104 to 105. And then there's only 3 more stopping points that I want to go to in this one, and then we'll be done with it. But this one's just a minute long. So you can let that one rock, right? Or we have to stop it.
Hold up.
This section, 104.04 to 105, 30, 104.04.
Program came to an end. Estimates of the number of libraries he paid for varied between 2,500 and 2,509. It was not only the libraries that Carnegie was interested in. He endowed trusts for universities, the advancement of science, etc. His wealth was so vast and increasing from the interest on the capital that he found it difficult to match his philanthropic schemes with the money he had. I kind of like that he used the word schemes because that's exactly what he was up to. Between 1897 and 1913, he promised over $170,000 to pay for the building of about 80 libraries in Ireland. 66 of the libraries were built and 62 of them have survived. Although the money that Carnegie gave for the Irish libraries was small in proportion to his total expenditure, it greatly helped the library movement in Ireland. In 1919, 81% of the towns in Ireland which had rate-supported libraries received contributions from Carnegie. This compares with 65% for Scotland and 49% for England and Wales. All right, folks, what I'm showing here is the very philanthropists that were financing eugenics in the United States, Europe, and other countries like Mexico were allowed to rebuild the libraries and collections of these devastated countries that had been destroyed by war. These foreign countries allowed these philanthropists to use their money to buy their way into being allowed to recreate these libraries with eugenics at the core. Controlling access to information was given to philanthropists who were ardent eugenicists. Why were these wealthy individuals so intent on helping foreign countries rebuild their libraries and institutions of knowledge? I believe they wanted to ensure Europe's rewritten history agreed with the United States' rewritten version of history. To ensure that happened, they had to be in full control of the information these countries received and excluded. How better to do that than by financing the entire endeavor? These philanthropists essentially were in control of what Europeans thought about not only their history, but also American history. Remember, much of early American history is intertwined with European history. Let me reiterate, these wealthy eugenicists were able to recreate European history and US history, and they did so by funding libraries, universities, and other centers of knowledge on both continents under the guise of philanthropy. Okay, so this is just a small fraction of information on how the negative.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. I think that's about right where I wanted to stop, about 105, 30, yeah. Now you see, when you're talking about philanthropy and how it works, I just gave you a prime example, Carnegie using his money, but it wasn't just Carnegie, it was Ford, it was Rockefeller, you know, these big names that were also involved with all, you know, with this, and these, you know, promoting this narrative. Because I showed you when Ford created the public school system, he said he wanted workers, not scientists, you know, because it was the Industrial Revolution. So, and then he said, give the workers the least amount of knowledge possible. So it's not like, you know, oh, well, he's a great man. Yeah, a great slave driver, you know. And when they sign that contract to work for him, you become an indentured servant, which is no less than a slave. Same thing, basically. All right? And we're debt slaves in America today. So now, let's just go to 121 to 132. I'm going to cut it short. I'm going to cut that kind of part out. But this is a great video, y'all. So support this brother. How Eugenics Erase Black History. That's the name of the video right there. Make sure you support this brother, subscribe, you know, and watch some of his works. He does a great job. He does a great job. Yeah.
And no amount of education or good environment can change a feeble-minded individual into a normal one, any more than it can change a redhead stock into a black-haired stock. To drive his point home, Goddard included a series of photographs of nefarious-looking and supposedly defective Kallikak family members. These photos had been doctored, darkening and distorting the eyes, mouths, and eyebrows, nose, and other facial features to make the adults and children appear stupid. Although retouching published photos was common during this era, the consistent addition of sinister features allowed Goddard to effectively portray the Kallikaks as mental and social defectives. All right, so let me comment on this section. Do you see where I read that retouching photos was common during this era? This goes to my point in previous videos when I assert that photos have been altered, replaced, etc. Many commenters on my videos believe that historical photos were not able to be manipulated back then. This is far from the truth. Photos had begun being manipulated in the mid-1800s. By the early 1900s, many photographers were very adept at manipulating photos. Anyway, back to Henry Goddard. On page 98, it states, mass sterilization, in Goddard's view, was merely the first step in corralling the feeble-minded. Sterilization did not diminish sexual function, just reproductive capability. His answer, mass incarceration in special colonies. Segregation through colonization seems in the present state of our knowledge to be the ideal and perfectly satisfactory method. On page 99, it states, Goddard coining a new word, moron. It was derived from moros, Greek for stupid and foolish. By 1913, he had taken his new intelligence test and a team of testers to Ellis Island to conduct experiments. American eugenicists long believed that the majority of immigrants, especially brown-haired Irish, Eastern European Jews, and Southeastern Italians, were genetically defective. He explained, "It should be noted that the immigration of recent years is of a decidedly different character from the earlier immigration. It is no longer representative of the respective races. It is admitted on all sides that we are now getting the poorest of each race." On page 100, it states, Chicago Municipal Chief Judge Harry Olson.
The Jews and the Italians were unfit, or feeble-minded, or whatever, terminology they use to describe them. You see how now it changed later, because in 1960, these people got the white status. They got the white status in 1960, ladies and gentlemen, adding to the white population. Because the whites knew that their numbers was falling off, and their birth rate wasn't enough to keep up with, their population. So you add the ones who you put down for a long time, and then you add them to your list of white people. Okay, JJ, let's go, brother.
Responsible for sentencing prisoners to the House of Corrections, was a revered leader of the eugenics movement. At the time of the House of the Correction study, he reminded colleagues, quote, "We have laid too great importance on the environmental factors and paid too little attention to the problem of heredity," end quote. On the same page, it continues on to say, mental tests applied to blacks led to an article in the Archives of Psychology reporting that when 486 whites and 907 blacks were examined, blacks scored only 3/4 as well as their white counterparts. The article noted that pure blacks tested the lowest, about 60% lower than whites. But as the amount of white blood increased in their ancestry, so did their test scores. It does not seem possible to raise the scholastic attainments of the Negro. It is probable that no expenditure of time or money would accomplish this end, since education cannot create mental power. Then on to page 101, it reads, quote, "Harvard psychologist Robert Yerkes was a leading eugenic theorist and a former student of Davenport's. Yerkes was a member of many elite eugenic committees, including a committee on the inheritance of mental traits and a committee on the genetic basis of human behavior. 2 years after helping invent the point scale, Yerkes became president of the American Psychological Association. Europe exploded into the war in 1914. America did not join the fray until 1917, but when it did, Washington struggled to classify more than 3 million drafted and enlisted soldiers. American Psychological Association President Yerkes pleaded for intelligence testing. He gathered Goddard and Stanford University eugenic activist Louis Terman and others to help develop standardized examinations. Working from May to July of 1917 at Goddard's laboratory at the Vineland Training School for Feeble-Minded Girls and Boys in New Jersey, these eugenic psychologists and others jointly developed what they portrayed as scientifically designed Army intelligence tests. These were submitted to the Army and the Surgeon General, soon authorizing mass testing. 2 main tests were devised: the written Army Alpha test for English-speaking literate men, and the pictorial Army Beta test for those who could not read or speak English. The Alpha test multiple choice questions could certainly be answered by sophisticated urbanites familiar with the country's latest consumer products, popular art, and entertainment. Yet, most of America's draftees hail from unsophisticated.
Here's the origins of your IQ tests, your SAT test. Okay? These are the origins of them. They start off as military tests. They're telling you is, right here, 2 main tests were devised: the written Army Alpha test for English-speaking literate men, and the pictorial Army Beta test for those who could not read or speak English. Okay? So these are the origins of your IQ test. During this time, eugenics is being passed around, and they've thrown this narrative in there too, so they create these IQ tests. Now let's see how biased these tests are to the, test takers. All right, let's go, JJ.
Sophisticated rural society. Large numbers of them had never been off the farm. Many came from insular religious families, which disdained theater, slick magazines, and smoking. No matter, the mental capacity of everyone who could read and write was measured by the same pop culture yardstick. Take a look at several examples of these questions provided from the book. The first one says, question, 500 is played with, Then possible answers, rackets, pins, cards, dice. Correct response, cards. Second one there, it says question. Becky Sharp appears in possible answers, Vanity Fair, Romola, The Christmas Carol, Henry V. Correct response, Vanity Fair. Next one, question. The Pierce Arrow car is made in possible answers, Buffalo, Detroit, Toledo, Flint. Correct response, Buffalo. Next question is Marguerite Clark is known as a possible answer, suffragist, singer, movie actress, writer. Correct response, movie actress. Next question. Velvet Joe appears in the advertisement for possible answers, tooth powder, dry goods, tobacco, soap. Correct response, tobacco. All right, so for the last question, it says, hasn't scratched yet, is used in advertising A, possible answers, drink, revolver, flour, cleanser. Correct response, cleanser. All right, so the book goes on to read, Americans and naturalized immigrants who could neither read nor write English were administered the beta picture exam. For example, beta test 6 offered 20 simple sketches with something missing. Fix it, the subject was instructed. He was then expected to pencil in the missing element. Bowling balls were missing from a bowling lane. The center net was subtracted from the tennis court. The incandescent filament was erased from the light bulb. A stamp was missing from a postcard. The upper left diamond was missing from a sketch of the diamonds on a playing card. All right, so moving on to page 102, predictable. Yerkes' results from all three tests identified vast numbers of morons among the eugenically inferior groups, so that Yerkes asserted the Army could not afford to reject all of them and still go to war. It would be totally impossible to exclude all morons, reported Yerkes, because 47% of whites and 89% of Negroes were shown to have a mental capacity below that of a 13-year-old. All right, so let me comment here real quick. We can see that the Army tests, they were rigged in favor of the well-educated, wealthy elite, not the average man that was signing up to be drafted into military service. Remember, there was no social media during those times. To stay up to date with current events and happenings, you would have to have been subscribed to multiple newspapers and magazines and have actually had the time to read them, which most hardworking Americans had very little of. According to the National Center of Education Statistics, the literacy rate in the early 1900s was very low, especially among foreign-born immigrants and Black Americans. All right, so getting back to the book, it says, in 1912, the German psychologist William Stern had begun referring to the original intelligence level as an intelligence age. Stern went further, dividing the intelligence age by the chronological age to create a ratio. In doing so, he coined the term intelligence quotient. In 1916, used the Stanford-Binet test, determined divided mental age by chronological age, and then multiplied by.
I gotta get my charger for my computer. Go ahead.
The intelligence age, y'all. Hey, remember we told you about the age of enlightenment? Well, now we're dealing with the intelligence age. You know, and that intelligence is about to become what they call your IQ test. Well, go ahead, JJ.
Here I go. Here we go.
100. This became the American version of the intelligence quotient. Terman nicknamed it IQ. The moniker became an instant icon of intelligence. Scales and rankings were devised. Those classified below a certain level, 70 scale points, were graded as either morons, imbeciles, or idiots. Feeble-mindedness had now a number. Soon everyone would receive one. Terman knew how such a number would be used. While studying California public school children, he argued, quote, if we would preserve our state for a class of people worthy of possessing it, we must prevent as far as possible the propagation of mental degenerates. Yerkes' work was advanced by another eugenic activist, Princeton psychologist Carl Brigham. A radical raceologist, Brigham analyzed Yerkes' findings for the world at large, casting them as eugenic evidence of Nordic supremacy and the racial inferiority of virtually everyone else. Brigham's 1922 book, A Study of the American Intelligence, published by no less than Princeton University Press, openly conceded that the volume was based on two earlier raceological books, Madison Grant's virulently racist Passing of the Great Race and William Ripley's equally biased Races of Europe. On page 103, it continues, the decline of intelligence is due to two factors, the change in the races migrating to this country and to the additional factor of sending of the lower and lower representatives of each race. The conclusion that our test results indicate a genuine intellectual superiority of the Nordic group over the Alpine and Mediterranean groups. According to Brigham, Negro intelligence was predestined by racial heredity, but could be improved by the greater amount of admixture of white blood. Brigham concluded, according to all the evidence available then, American intelligence was declining and will proceed with an accelerated rate as the racial admixture becomes more and more extensive.
Mediterranean, there's a Mediterranean group they look down on. Yeah, see, there you go.
Shortly before the Eugenics Record Office installed its board of scientific directors, the New York State Legislature had created the Rockefeller Foundation, which boasted fabulous assets. John D. Rockefeller donated $35 million the first year and $65 million more the next year. Shy and intensely private, the oil heir seemed to enjoy corresponding with Davenport about sundry eugenic topics. On January 27, 1912, using his personal 26 Broadway stationery, the young Rockefeller wrote Davenport a letter about a plan to incarcerate feeble-minded criminal women for an extra length of time so they would, quote, be kept from perpetuating their kind until after the period of childbearing had been passed. Then it goes on to say, big money made all the difference for eugenics. Indeed, biological supremacy, raceology, and the coercive eugenic battle plans were just talk until those ideas married into American affluence. With that affluence came the means and the connections to make eugenic theory an administrative reality. Mrs. Harriman, the railroad heiress, wielded great power. When she made a request to New York state officials, it was difficult for them to say no. Davenport's proposed county surveys in search of the unfit, for example, were implemented by state officials. Eugenic agencies were established, often bearing innocuous names. Robert Hebard, Secretary of the State of New York State Board of Charities, reported to Mrs. Harriman that, quote, our Eugenics Bureau is known officially as the Bureau of Analysis and Investigation, end quote. In describing the agency's work, Hebard's letter reflected the usual eugenic parlance. The study of groups of defective individuals is so closely related to the welfare of future generations that the lessons drawn from the histories of abnormal families can prevent the continuance of conditions which foster social evils, end quote. He added that, to this end, the records of some 300,000 people had already been tabulated in 24 of New York State's counties. Hebard promised to coordinate his agency's work with privately financed eugenic field surveys. In Rock County, under your direction, he deferentially added, permit me to say that it is gratifying to know your deep interest in this branch of work of the State Board of Charities. Another such agency was organized that became known as the National Committee on Prison and Prison Labor. First organized in 1910 by the New York State Department of the exploitation of convict manufactured goods. 4 years later, the body changed its name amid a widening of its activities. Judge Olson, the stalwart eugenic activist who also directed the Municipal Court of Chicago Psychopathic Laboratory, steered his colleagues on the prison committee to create similar municipal psychopathic labs to document hereditary criminality in their cities. The New York Police Department did indeed establish a psychopathic laboratory for eugenic investigations, utilizing Eugenics Record Office field workers supplied by Mrs. Harriman. Davenport himself headed up the prisons group's special committee on eugenics, which was established, quote, to get at the hereditary factors and antisocial behavior with the aid of a careful family history, end quote. Prisoners at Sing Sing were the first to be examined by Davenport's researchers under a year-long joint project with the Eugenics Record Office. Page 115. There was no way for the public to know if a seemingly unrelated.
Now remember, we became criminals after slavery, with the prison lease system. And they saying that, criminals, drunkards and all this, it's hereditary family. So if your mother was a drunk, then you need to be sterilized too, because you're going to be a drunk. If your mama was a criminal, guess what? You need to be sterilized along with your mama, because you're going to be a criminal. Hereditary. Feeble-mindedness, idiot, and with all these terms that they're making up. You heard him say he created the term moron from moros. So, like I said, Like all these agencies right here in your face being told to you that they all are part of this. Right here.
Yeah.
That's a great video from this brother. Keep going, JJ. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, we at 146?
Yeah. I guess.
Oh, well, we done. That's
Okay.
good. That's good enough right there, JJ. All right. So now we can go to the next one. And like I said, y'all, now you see all of the top Ivy League schools, all the government, USDA, all these things, Carnegie, Ford, they're all funding this stuff with their money, pushing this eugenics movement. And now you know a lot more about what eugenics is and how detrimental it was to black history in America. You see what I'm saying? So now y'all can do y'all's research. That just gives y'all a little something there. You know what I'm saying? And Garvey, I'm gonna say this. Colonization, there's a U.S. colonization society, right? Garvey came over right about that time. He was promoting their narrative for them. The colonization society was already talking about sending us back to Africa, so Garvey was just allowed to come and speak his speech because that's what the white people was on, and Garvey had talked with the Klan. He talked with the Klan. Because they was on the same, narrative he was, but that was the American Colonization Society. It was genocide in 21st century America. And we're going to watch part 1 and part 2. That's it, And the philanthropists and the presidents and all these people are all involved with this narrative, pushing this narrative, this theory, this faithful, this racism, family. You heard it when they gave you the definition of eugenics and all of that.
Are you talking about abortion? Because that's the only one I have after the.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that one, but I said black genocide in the 21st century America. I said I didn't want to say the first word, but you said it. So, yeah, there it is.
All right. It's on the screen?
I don't see it yet.
Oh, not yet. Hold up. Damn. This ain't tripping. All right, let's see if it. All right, hold up.
Yeah, but I thank everybody for coming out. I thank everybody in chat. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all. These are the things that we need to start pushing around the truth, family, because they always blaming us. They got us fighting for theirs and killing our own, whether it be through gun violence, whether it be through abortion, whatever. They got us fighting for theirs.
Can y'all see it now?
And killing our own. Okay. Not yet.
Okay, hold up. All right, hold up.
hills in the northern part of Denton County, Texas. The remains of more than 400 people lie in an overgrown cemetery. This place never had a marker to begin with. It's because the people who were buried in them were considered to be property, not much different than a horse or a mule. This
trying to get it up. Good. All right.
Hello, my name is Marcus Lloyd.
And I'm Michelle Renee.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right, let's see. It's loading up. All right. What the hell? That's. Keep talking while I'm finding this.
I'm gonna get right back to it. So like I said, now you see all the government agencies, all the colleges, your governments, your top colleges, your governments, even your presidents was on this eugenics, down with this eugenics movement and being promoted not only in America but around the world. And they had admiration for the Nazis, admiration for the eugenics over here. Figurehead
Forgotten a long time ago, a few headstones can still be found. But most of the graves in this place never had a marker to begin with. That's because the people who were buried in them were considered to be property, not much different than a horse or a mule. This Hello, my name is Marcus Lloyd.
And I'm Michelle Renee. We thank you for joining us. If you are African American, you and I will always be connected to the people whose bodies lie in that cemetery. Our ancestors may have worked alongside of them in the same cotton fields. They could have been bought and sold at the same auction houses or had chains hammered around their necks by the same overseer. Some of them may have even been hunted down by the same slave catcher or whipped by the same master.
For almost 250 years, our people were held in bondage. And today, this period of history has come to be known by an ancient Swahili word. It's called the Ma'afa. And it began when the first Africans were shackled to the bottom of a slave ship. But the irony is that it did not end when the slaves were freed. In fact, it hasn't ended yet. And as you're about to see, a hidden racial agenda is keeping the Ma'afa alive into the 21st century.
What shall be done with the 4 million slaves if they are emancipated? This question has been answered and can be answered in many ways. Primarily, it is a question less for man than for God, less for human intellect than for the laws of nature to solve. Our answer is, do nothing with them. Mind your business and let them mind theirs. Your doing with them is their greatest misfortune. They have been undone by your doings, and all they now ask and really have need of at your hands is just to let them alone. Frederick Douglass, 1862.
It is the stupidity of man to think that he can do evil, even some monstrous evil, and it won't have any backlash on himself. But of course, it seldom works that way. And the moment he figures that out, he starts looking for a way to avoid the repercussions of what he's done. This is what happened with slavery. In the early 1800s, as it began to look like the end of slavery might be on the horizon, white America started to be concerned that a day of reckoning was coming. The primary fear for the average person was of retribution and insurrection, and that was a reasonable fear. After all, it's illogical to think that you can do to a whole group of people what was done to African Americans and think that they will just take it lying down forever. And of course, there were things like the Nat Turner uprisings. But for their fears went beyond things like insurrection. They were worried about the financial impact. Remember, it was not just the cotton plantations that profited from slavery. Whether you're talking about the banks or the insurance companies, the railroads, even the newspapers, the fact is that almost every aspect of the American economy was at some level or another invested in the slave business. You also need to recognize that for the wealthy elitists who controlled this system, slaves were an asset as long as they were slaves. But at the moment they are set free, they become a liability. And what the elite knew was that the end of slavery would instantly release 4 million people into the economy who had been kept uneducated and effectively unemployable anywhere but the cotton field. And what they were concerned about was that.
Yep, and then that's when we come into the Reconstruction, y'all. And that's reconstructing the Constitution. You know, anytime you hear that, reconstruction, you know what I'm saying? That's another term that they like to use. Means to do it again, to do over. See what I'm saying? So they're doing it over since they allowed all these 4 million black people to come free, and then that's when they start creating the laws, putting us into prisons, making us, and then calling us criminals. Keep on saying it over and over again, and everybody starts believing that we're criminals, the whole world. Telling the big lie over and over again, and eventually everybody will start believing it. See what I'm saying? So, like I said, this is Reconstruction. They're creating new, prison lease system. You know what I'm saying? And then the 13th Amendment says abolish slavery, but unless you're incarcerated. They started making up laws like reckless eyeballing. I'm just going to give you one. Reckless eyeballing. That means you can't look at white people a certain way, or you could go to jail. And they was getting sentences for like 10, 12 years just for, looking at white people the wrong way, reckless eyeballing, or not getting off the sidewalk, or something like that. When white people was walking down the sidewalk, you don't get off the sidewalk, you get 12 years. Big business. Prison industry is big business, still to this day. Go ahead, JJ.
What'd you say? You ready?
This was going to bankrupt the American economy. Taxes were going to go through the roof to take care of these people. Crime was going to be rampant. The prisons were going to be flooded. There was going to be this population overrun. And in the North, the biggest fear was migration from the South of these black people. The other fear that these people had was intermarriage between blacks and whites would lead to a loss of racial purity. The question was, what were they going to do about it? And their initial thought was that they would just send all the slaves back to Africa. This plan was called colonization, and it had broad support among the wealthy elite. In fact, the American Colonization Society was even funded by the United States Congress. But in the end, colonization proved to be unworkable, and the idea was eventually scrapped. But about that same time, a new philosophy was emerging in the world. It was called eugenics, and for some, it seemed like the perfect solution to what had become known as the Negro dilemma.
I do not join in the belief that the African is our equal in brain or in heart. And I believe that if we can, in any fair way, possess ourselves of his services, we have an equal right to utilize them to our advantage. Francis Galton, 1857.
Francis Galton is known as the father of eugenics. He actually coined the phrase eugenics. So he believed in trying to increase those he felt were superior in stock and decrease those he felt were inferior. Francis Galton came from a very wealthy family, a family that made its wealth from the slave trade. And what a lot of people don't know is that Francis Galton was a cousin to Charles Darwin. Francis Galton took Charles Darwin's philosophies and ideas and thoughts, and he actually put them into practice. And that's what we know today as eugenics. Eugenics and evolution are related in that they both see what they consider to be the highest form of primates, such as.
Did you follow that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard how Francis Galton took Darwin's theories and applied them into his BS theories, but he put it into action. This is putting Darwin's theories into action, sterilizing, classifying people as unfitting just because you're not them. And they're saying it's the Nordic races are the ones who are the great races. The Alpine and the Mediterranean are not as good stock as them. And you heard them say that the Italians, that's one of the Mediterranean people, how they were unfit and all this. You see, so all these terms being weaponized, evolution and eugenics by these two wicked so-called scholars with their racist theories. Okay, and it stems from Linnaeus to Blumenbach, and then Malthus with the population thing, and you hear it all being evolved into their BS. I want to cuss, but it's all of this is evolving from Carl Linnaeus and Blumenbach. And like I say, the only thing that is evolving, family, is these lies. Okay? Making them worse as the generations go on. All right, go ahead, JJ.
Is the gorilla as almost indistinguishable from what they consider the lowest form of human, the African and the Aborigine.
At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man and a more civilized state, and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of as now between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Charles Darwin, 1890.
Charles Darwin is very well known for writing The Origin of Species in the 1800s. This book gave rise to evolutionary theory. What people don't know is that there was actually a longer original title to this book, and that was On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Now, copies and editions that they made afterwards eliminated that phrase about the favored races. Evidently, they understood then that it was politically incorrect.
Some may defend Francis Galton because eventually that he rejected slavery, but they do point out that all of his wealth did derive from the slave trade, but also it needs to be known that he, as well as other eugenists, did not reject slavery until after it had ended, and they could not any longer exploit blacks legally. So at that point, it would have been quite easy for he and his cohorts to reject slavery. I think this is the point that we all have to really realize, that the eugenics movement was not invented by the everyday average white American, but by a select group of wealthy white elitists that had often used this ideology to pit all of white America against Black America. And so we see that indeed that truly is the case even to this day.
Average Negroes possess too little intellect, self-reliance, and self-control to make it possible for them to sustain the burden of any respectable form of civilization without a large measure of external guidance and support. Francis Galton, 1873.
Eugenicists believed that Africans were inferior, not just mentally, but
You see, there they go again. There's another person saying that we needed their support without a very large amount of their support helping us. That we're not smart enough to, live in civilization and be civilized. Just like Darwin. Okay. Go ahead, JJ.
physically, and that left to themselves, left alone, they would not make it. The problem is, it didn't work. With that failure, the eugenicists moved on to what is known as positive eugenics. In positive eugenics, the eugenicists wanted the white population to reproduce, to have so many children that it overwhelmed the Black population, but that didn't work either. Next, they moved on to what they called negative eugenics. They knew that they could not round up all the Blacks in the nation and execute them, so they decided to create an environment where they would convince the Blacks to severely limit the number of children they were going to have, and thereby commit race suicide.
The problem of the socially fit must be treated not as one of color, but as a problem of the spread of feeble-mindedness. Dr. Charles Davenport, 1913, director of the Eugenics Record Office, Cold Spring Harbor, New York, and co-founder of the American Eugenics Society.
That's the end of the album. Indigenous.
Yeah. Okay, you could just let it rock. It was getting ready to play the next one.
Oh, there's another one behind it? Oh, part two? All right.
Yeah, we were just gonna play the next one and then for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, come on. All right. Let me see straight. Did I fall off?
No, you still up there. We still up there.
I see you, but you ain't got nothing up here, and nobody saying anything.
Okay, hold up. Let me see. Let me.
Karima said, "You hear Karima?"
Yeah.
Okay. We only got 2 more videos left, brother, and that's it. One of them 6 minutes, and then one of I think it's like 3 minutes. That'll be it for it. We'll be done.
Yeah, because I don't know what happened. And y'all say I'm still on.
Can Karima pull it up?
I don't know if you sent it. Yes, if you, I don't know if she might be on her phone. But I don't know.
I'm waiting. It's not up here.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, I know, Kareem. I'm trying to get back to it. I can't even. My computer. I don't know. I can't even see the StreamYard thing. Okay, there. Wait, hold up. Where we go? Okay, there that is. Okay, hold up. Present. I couldn't share screen. Share screen. Right here.
It wouldn't be an Indigenous Blackman show if there wasn't some technical difficulties, family.
Yeah,
you know how but we still getting it in. We still getting seen. Karima, how many people did you say was looking on Facebook, sister? Checking us out on this last.
I think 1,000 people seen now.
So that's 1,000 on JJ channel. When they do stream it, we had 400. Thank God. That's a blessing. Yeah. I'm glad that y'all paying attention and watching, because the more people that we have, you know.
Yeah, you're going in and out. JJ not connected. His channel not connected.
Not connected.
Yeah, your video is not showing. But you not connected on your platform.
Hold on. Okay. Okay, hold up. Yeah, okay. Let's try it now.
I got a video.
I'll see it up right now.
Yeah.
You go to the end of this one, and it'll take you directly to the
people lie in an overgrown cemetery.
Which one?
And even though it was abandoned and
Is this the
forgotten
right
a
one?
long
This
time
ain't the
ago,
right one. It goes all the way to the end.
That's the first one we showed already.
Okay, let me go to the end.
Go all the way to the end, and then it'll roll to the next one. It'll just roll over to the next one.
All right.
Socially fit, it must be treated not as one of color, but as a problem of the spread of feeble-mindedness. Dr. Charles Davenport, 1913, director of the Eugenics Record Office, Cold Spring Harbor, New York, and co-founder of the American Eugenics Society.
Promote their agenda simply because they knew it'd be viewed as politically incorrect and socially unacceptable. So what they did was use code words that were once successful in slavery, terms such as feed, immoral, criminal, tag those labels upon the targeted community. These words were less inflammatory, so it lets society more or less not be totally alarmed of the original intent, but deep down inside, I believe everyone truly knew what segment of society and what people they were actually talking about.
Even a cursory glance at the charts, photographs, and diagrams used to popularize eugenic ideals reveals that the unfit were swarthy, black, and ugly by Anglo-Saxon standards, with flattened mouths profiles. Harriet Washington, author, Medical Apartheid.
In the early 20th century, the white elitists who made up the eugenics movement were no longer just philosophers and academics. Now they were industrialists and billionaires who had come to embrace a worldview that was essentially identical to the eugenics movement. Public crusaders for the eugenics movement. They were certainly willing to be the brains and the money behind it, but they would hire crusaders to do the dirty work. And the primary one they settled upon was a woman named Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of the American Birth Control League and the publisher of its newsletter, the Birth Control Review. On a practical level, the relationship between Sanger and these elitists was to advance their common agendas. They needed a front man, and she needed money. And the whole thing would be held together by this kind of bizarre obsession with race and class. The result was that the American Birth Control League became the driving force behind the American eugenics movement. Eugenics would no longer just be a philosophy. Sanger and others like her were going to put it into practice.
We are paying for and even submitting to the dictates of an ever-increasing, unceasingly spawning class of human beings who never should have been born at all. Margaret Sanger, 1922.
The laws of nature require the obliteration of the unfit, and human life is valuable only when it is of use to the community or race. Madison Grant, 1916, co-founder, American Eugenics Society.
The black man has never been a competitor, but has always been subservient to the white race. And just so long as he remains subservient, his position is secure. And just so soon as he becomes a competitor, his fate is sealed. Dr. Benjamin Hayes, eugenicist, 1905.
The American Birth Control League was wise enough to get their program of population control across by using what had worked in the past. The same was once again used by the American Birth Control League. The Margaret Sangers of those days did not come out and say they were trying to eliminate black people. What they did say, they were trying to rid society of the feeble-minded.
He's wrong there. Margaret Sanger did come out and say that she wanted to eliminate the Negro. In her words, she said, we don't want the Negro to know that we want to eliminate them. So we will get a few ministers to quell any of their more rebellious members. She did say that. Okay? Yeah. And she also said that she was going to, earlier in that letter to Dr. Clarence Gamble from Procter & Gamble, the Procter & Gamble Corporation.
Yeah.
Clarence Gamble, Dr. Clarence Gamble, who's a eugenist, she's writing to him. And she's talking about the 1939, Negro Project that only lasted for 3 years, and then it turned into Planned Parenthood. She created the American Birth Control League too. So, like I said, they say that she was just about birth control, and you don't know what birth control really means. And she said birth control without, eugenics without birth control is like a house built on sand, an unstable foundation, basically, is what she's saying. So you have to have eugenics and birth control together. All right? Go ahead, JJ.
they were trying to rid the society of the criminal. Well, she was successful simply because of her eugenics friends for the past 50 years had put those labels on minorities and African Americans, and therefore society was more or less desensitized. In effect, the code words hid the agenda of Margaret Sanger and the eugenists. At that time, they did shift over to what they call the quality of life. It was a philosophy unquestionably used to target the poor simply because what the quality of life at its core meaning was that poor people really didn't have a reason to live. Only the white, those with status, had any chance of a meaningful or purposeful life. The solution for the poor now was not to eliminate the circumstances that would cause poverty. Their solution now was to eliminate the poor, eliminate the impoverished, and just wipe them off the face of the earth.
The practice of birth control among the majority of colored people would probably be more eugenic than among their white compatriots. The dissemination of the information of birth control should have begun with this class, rather than with the upper social and economic classes of white citizens. Walter Turpening, Birth Control Review, 1932.
In virtually every community where Negro one finds them in fat times and lean alike, contributing a disproportionate number to the roles of the dependents and delinquents. They make excessive demands on the white man's charity and overtax his patients. Newell Sims, Birth Control Review, 1932.
Author Madison Grant was a co-founder of the American Eugenics Society and an officer of the New York Zoological Society. In 1906, he had authorized an exhibit at the Bronx Zoo in which a 22-year-old African named Oda Benga was displayed in a cage in the monkey house. Sharing the cage with Benga was an orangutan.
When a local clergyman protested the exhibit, he said that it was clearly intended to be a demonstration of Darwin's theory of evolution. Local proponents of Darwinism apparently agreed and labeled the display educational. 10 years after this event, Oda Benga committed suicide.
That's crazy.
During Hitler's regime, the Germans were supplied with elaborate charts and complicated theses supposedly proving the superiority of the German people. It is interesting to note that at the bottom of these charts were the colored people of the world, most conspicuously, the black people. Floyd McKissick, National Director, Congress of Racial Equality, 1967.
An often overlooked fact about the German Holocaust is that the Nazis did not simply target the Jewish population. They went after the black community as well. Under the threat of being sent to concentration camps if they did not cooperate, Afro-German citizens were not only forced to undergo sterilization themselves, they were also required to turn over their children for sterilization. In his book Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler explained the motivation behind such programs.
The Jews were responsible for bringing Negroes into the Rhineland. It suits the purpose of the cool, calculating Jew who would use this means of introducing a process of bastardization in the very center of the European continent, and by infecting the white race with the blood of an inferior stock, would destroy the foundation of its independent existence. Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf.
The Nazi attitude toward blacks was clearly in a 1944 book by Robert Ley, who was the head of the German Labor Front, Parasite, and the racially inferior Negro. He described the result as a racial swamp that would eventually destroy the natural superiority of the Aryan race as African brutes who had not been tamed even by centuries of slavery. Any regret.
Since World War II, it has been well documented that Adolf Hitler was profoundly influenced by the American eugenics movement, and that many of his government's racial policies were actually developed from the writings of American eugenicists like Madison Grant and Harry Laughlin. In fact, Hitler referred to Grant's book, The Passing of the Great Race, as his Bible.
Meanwhile, American eugenicists were routinely praising Hitler and holding up the Nazi eugenics program as a model for the United States to copy.
The leader of the German nation, Adolf Hitler, has been able to construct a comprehensive racial policy of population development and improvement. The difference between the Jew and the Aryan is as unsurmountable as that between black and white. Germany has set a pattern which other nations must follow. Dr. Clarence Gordon Campbell, 1935, President, Eugenics Research Association, New York.
Among those American
Yeah, JJ, as bad as the blacks.
Yeah.
The Jews. Okay. So, like I said, you know, they just was making up all kinds of crazy stuff. Hitler was following right in behind American eugenics. Go ahead, brother.
It's twirling. It's getting ready to start.
And I'm gonna cut it back to just one video. This next video will be my last one on the presentation. But I'm pretty sure that y'all got it down. You know what we're dealing with here when we're talking about eugenics. And this is one of the wickedest times in recent history. You know, and these things are still going on today. And this next video will pull all of this together and show you how it's still going on and existing to this day. You know. And Margaret Sanger was not pro-life or pro-choice. She said that, you know, the best thing for a big family to do for his children was to kill it. And then she was saying that people should get, they can get married, but they have to get permission to have babies.
Yeah, it ain't playing, bro. I don't know what the hell going on. Should just let it play it out. Yeah.
Well, you can turn this one off.
Eugenicists,
There you
who
go.
most strongly supported
There
the
you go.
Nazis, was a member of the American Eugenics Society, a director of the American Birth Control League, and a writer for the Birth Control Review. His name was Lothrop Stoddard.
As an avowed racist, Stoddard was the author of a book called The Rising Tide of Color Against White World Supremacy, which was widely promoted by the Ku Klux Klan. In another book, The Dragon and the Cross, Stoddard was identified as the exalted Cyclops of the Massachusetts chapter of the Klan.
Non-white races must be excluded from America. The red and black races, if left to themselves, revert to a savage or semi-savage state in a short time.
Lothrop Stoddard, Director, American Birth Control League.
Oh, that was
of December, 1939.
Now we only got one more.
I don't know if I have though, because
One more.
you didn't send me. You only sent me up to 12.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you could type it in. I was gonna ask you this last one. I was gonna ask you if you could just please type it in for me, because this one, you know, shows how, like I said, it's the origins of this stuff and how it's still going on today. We got population control, like Bill Gates over there worried about Africa's population, boom, all up in their mix, you know, making up shit, and then gain of function. But we ain't gonna get into that. But yeah, Margaret Sanger, you know, this is the last one, and we wanted to just delve into her real quick on, you know, her devilishness and wickedry, because you hear her saying, you know, that we don't want the Negro to know that we want to exterminate them. I mean, come on, yo. They're telling you they want to get rid of you. It's hereditary. Criminal, drunkards. All this is hereditary. So, like I said, if the mama gets sterilized, then the daughter gets, or the daughter and the son, or the daughter, son, however many kids she has, are criminals also. It's hereditary. You see what I'm saying? So they just came up, let's just get rid of them. You see? And that's, like I said, Hitler did what he did. The leaders over in China, they did what they did. And, all around the world, this was going on. But yeah, all right, you ready to type it in?
Yeah, hold up.
Yeah,
what is
okay. Margaret Singer and
hold up. Okay, hold up.
Margaret Singer and
In the birth control movement.
What'd you say?
In the birth control movement.
No. Margaret Singer and the plot to exterminate Black Americans. Margaret Singer and the plot to exterminate Black Americans. And it's CBN News is the provider. CBN News. I know that's a religious channel, but
Hold up.
and I didn't go into Alfred Russell.
Monday.com is the best guy for work.
Here on the home front, several states are setting records for early voting.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Inflation, the economy, and immigration. Abortion is listed as a top issue of The Seth Gruber Show, and the author of the book, The 1916 Project, and executive producer of the New York Times unveiled Nicole Hannah-Jones's 1619 Project. That's a revisionist account of American history that recasts the country as a racist nation centered on slavery. So now you've released a book and a film called The 1916 Project. Tell us about the significance of that year for Americans then and today, years later.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, Jones with her quote Shakespeare, but it said all America is systemically racist. And it came out about 9 months before George Floyd. And it said nothing is redeemable about America. So when George Floyd died, all of American left 2020, burning according to Chris Cuomo and Don at CNN, because they're so systemically discriminated against. And then this led into the cancel culture of anything that was racist, which was hilarious to watch. So Aunt Jemima, the syrup lady, no longer, you can't buy that syrup anymore. And the disciples of the 1619 Project and BLM Incorporated teamed up to attack Planned Parenthood in the summer of 2020. Highly hilarious. So these were not pro-lifers attacking Planned Parenthood. We've been doing that for over 100 years. These were pro-abortion, cultural Marxist, radical leftists attacking Planned Parenthood in July of 2020. And they said, your founder was a racist. And so then they took her name off of their Manhattan, New York City Planned Parenthood clinic. And New York City took Margaret Sanger's name off of the Margaret Sanger Square, which led me to ask a question. If you've lied to us about your patron saint, what else are you lying to us about? And the sexual revolution that caused you to suddenly cancel a woman whose name you had given awards in to Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. We expose that all in my book and film by when Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood,
Americans don't understand or they misunderstand about abortion and Margaret Sanger and racism?
Well, Margaret Sanger launched the Negro Project in 1930. Least intelligent and fit, end quote. And then
You try to play it again?
Yeah.
So Aunt Jemima, the syrup lady, remember that? No longer, you can't buy to eat its own, which always happens, Gary. And the radical left and the disciples of the 1690 Project and BLM. So these were not pro-lifers attacking Planned Parenthood. We've been doing that for over 100 years. These were pro-abortion, cultural Marxist, radical leftists attacking Planned Parenthood in July of 2020. And they said, your founder was a racist. And so then they took her name off of their Manhattan, New York City Planned Parenthood clinic. And New York City took Margaret Sanger's name off of the Margaret Sanger Square, which led me to ask a question. If you've lied to us about your patron saint, revolution, that caused you to suddenly, whose name you had given awards in to Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, we exposed that all in my book and film by going back to 1916 when Margaret Sanger clinic.
Well, what do you believe many Blacks don't understand or they misunderstand about abortion and racism?
Well, Margaret Sanger launched the Negro Project in 1939. It was an initiative of Planned Parenthood. And the opening proposal said, okay, this is her words, said, the mass of Negroes, particularly in the South, are still breeding carelessly and disastrously, with the result that the increase among Negroes, even more than among whites, is from that portion of the population intelligent and fit, end quote. And Shire sort of project to stop having kids. So where did Margaret Sanger focus her efforts? On organizing birth control in Black communities, in minority communities. And so what I think many Americans don't understand today is that abortion is never a tool of empowerment or freedom for anyone, certainly not for those that the left has disproportionately targeted to decrease their population numbers. Today, Black women of childbearing age are about 4% of American population, but they obtain almost 40% of the nation's abortions, fulfilling Margaret Sanger's dreams. They're trying to eradicate you and kill you in the name of racism and eugenics, but they call it healthcare and female empowerment and feminism. And we're exposing all of what this rotten agenda is and where it comes from in the 1916 Project film, which released October 22nd on our Twitter X account online for free.
Well, tell us more about modern day movements sexually with the culture of death.
Yeah, so we have to understand, Gary, and I want your listeners to understand that Planned Parenthood is not an abortion organization, purely. They are the largest abortion provider in the world, but that's not all they are. Today, as of this recording, brother and people listening, Planned Parenthood is the second largest provider of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormone. Industry is Planned Parenthood's fastest growing revenue stream. We're talking about drugs that if you start them early and you continue on them, Gary, you're chemically castrated, you're sterilized, you won't be able to have children. This shouldn't surprise you because Planned Parenthood wasn't part of the eugenics movement. They were the eugenics movement. Margaret Sanger called herself a eugenicist. So it's not a coincidence that today, over 100 years after the founding of Planned Parenthood is almost the largest provider of sterilizing drugs to confuse America's confused youth and help architect the perfect comprehensive sex public school
again, like
well,
and stuff in between it. But if you could just rewind it like
yeah.
a minute, because it tells you that she is the one to Planned Parenthood. Her creation is the one who's, the second rider of these, steroids that these confused kids who want to have sex changes are taking, and they're not telling the kids that when you get this sex change, that you're going to be sterile for the rest of your life. And if you get it too early, you're going to have complications, because if you get it before you even matured, women steadily maturing. So if you get it too early, you're not done with your puberty. Then real problems start occurring. But they're the ones who's funding this medicine, for kids.
Hey, my wife called. Hold on for a second, bro.
All right.
And we fell off too. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah.
I went to my grandma's house for the first time.
Okay.
Okay, we can hear your conversation.
Oh, hold up, babe. All right, let me call you right back. I'm live, baby. Okay? I'm calling you right back. I'm almost done. Okay? All right. Oh, yeah, give me something. All right. Thank you, Kareem. Oh, shit. Oh, I thought it looked like it fell off. Is there something went wrong? All right.
I just want to jump in and say that Singer's information and her theologies are still used today with professors like Berkeley University.
I don't know.
No, that's right. I'm looking it up right now.
And then can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Just go ahead and wrap it up, family.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if y'all heard it well, but they're telling you that that's coming into today's times right there. That's bringing it right here to you, to your family today. As they're letting grown men who have no, teaching degree or nothing come in just because they dress like Powerpuff Girls and re-kill kids in school, promoting this hypersexuality narrative. And you can be what you want to be and change it, and and this is also
Trump said that's over with. Trump said that's over with.
When you get that sentence, you're sterilized, you can't have kids no more. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just end with that. And I'd like to say thank y'all for coming out. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for sticking around, and I hope y'all learned something today and pass this around. You have my permission to pass any of my videos that I've done around, because like I said, we need this narrative to get out. We need the truth to get out and stop being lied to and allowing these people to, dictate to us who we are, how to live, and where we come from. So with that, keep your head high, your grass low, and stop lying to my people. And I love y'all. Peace.
All right, champ. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was pretty informative. Kareem, you want to get us up out of here? And we'll get back with y'all pretty soon.
That was not Karima, that was me.
Oh, Karima ain't on here?
No. She
on. Hold on.
Okay.
We about to end.
Yeah.
About to end.
Okay. All right.
I'll praise you, Most High. Yeah, that sound good, y'all. Hello. What we doing?
Hey, cook that up, Khalid.
We still getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, we still getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still. They said you got the call, they trying to blackball you. Like what they own, bro. You can't blackball a boss. The whole world, they hate Israel. The way you hate your neighbor, might as well pull the trigger on yourself. You know we get excited by the smoke. Every day we casting flesh. Say my treasure stored in heaven, we gon' blow the rest. They disrespected and we checked. Then back that causing kept it still. They asking others about my business, but I ain't got no instant miss. See, I still deal with ox direct, cause your person don't mean you respect. Your outlet don't get no credit if the ox ain't in it. Money answer all things and you got all these questions. Playing Vic. Look, I employ slavery. I'll give you broke your head. Yeah, them crews in the hood, Jews in the hood. I caught them clues, now I'm good. I broke it down, he understood my all to you. Filtered through, you found a few, I'm good. We what we sold, this here exclusive. They like, hey, folk, look what you doing. We still getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me, vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, we still getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me, vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still. Most I told me, be still, give a room to work. Know my movie work. If faith ain't good, don't put the work in. In the spirit flexing, that my day job. Getting the mode out my own, I don't know what they are. Before I got the blueprint, and I'm too legit to quit. Let it spark in the dark, be a light, got it lit. Trying to map my movement, got my haters pondering. The odds set the questionnaire, they wanna know if you still lit. It hit different, you authentic, a lot of odds pretending. We do it for the Lord, got my own motion, who are you to judge? The most high first, none above. Tech in the spirit, we locked in, they'll come against your plot. You know Judas said, yeah, we spit them scripts, they barely now. Came on slave ships, then you not black. You know they tell you everything. Isaiah 30:20, yeah, we bad. You see what happened when they tried to rail the train up off the track. False witness, hypocrite. We throw shots back, now they feel hit. Must go get it. We still getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me, vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still. Getting to the money, got these haters in they field. Lil' homie, let them chill. Most I told me, vengeance hit my enemies, my footstools. We ain't got no beef for real. Just here, this how we live. Look here, homie, be still.